If you're a pet lover, it's natural to want your fur baby to be around forever. Even the thought of losing your animal best friend, a source of constant companionship, unconditional love, and joy, can be tough. And when that end does come, the pain can be truly heart-wrenching and even immobilizing. From personal and professional experience, I've found that the loss of a pet and the grieving process that follows can be one of life's most devastating and hard to move on from events. In truth, there is something so indescribably sacred and precious about the human and pet companion bond that our hearts, so stuck in grief, can find it difficult to move on. Yet life does call us to move forward, to find peace and, in time, maybe even a new friend to care for and love. Today, I am joined by a New York Times bestselling author and pet grief specialist, Jon Katz, who will guide us into the art of understanding and healing from pet loss. Today, we'll focus on this listener's real-life question. My Lola has been with me for 14 years until I lost her to congestive heart failure. The last year was tough because I watched her decline and final death. After I lost her, I went to websites, online support to try to ease my grief. I feel that I am in a good place most of the time, although when I frequently come across others who ask, "Where is Lola?" I go back to my grief and break down, or when I am at home and start thinking about her not being on this earth. I have looked into getting another dog, but that brings me back to my grief too. Are there any ways to get through or past this empty loss? How can I be strong in public when others ask about her? And with that issue as the focus of today's episode, I'm Dr. Carla Manly, and this is Imperfect Love.
Welcome to Imperfect Love with Dr. Carla Manly, psychologist, author, and relationship expert. I'm here to help unravel mysteries and misconceptions about love, relationships, and mental health issues, plus everything in between. Love is complicated, people are imperfect, and relationships surely can be tough. Together, we'll navigate this messy, imperfect space of real life.
Please note, as this episode contains sensitive information, listener discretion is advised. If you need support, please see the special links in the show notes. Today, I am joined by an amazing special guest, Jon Katz. Jon is a New York Times bestselling author, journalist, dog lover, and human kindness advocate. Jon has graced our world with many wonderful works, including the timeless classic on pet loss and grief, Going Home, Finding Peace When Pets Die. Welcome to the podcast, Jon. I am so honored and delighted to have you with us today.
Thank you. I'm the one who's honored, I think. I appreciate you having me here.
It's such a joy to connect with you. You're such a wonderful soul and do so much good for so many people who have, and so many pets, but for their people who have lost them, you have really paved the way into helping us understand why we are so attached to our pets and why we mourn them so deeply. So before we launch into this really important topic that affects so many people, could you tell our listeners just a little bit about what makes you, you?
Well, what makes me is 77 years of life, I think, particularly getting up there. But you learn a lot. And I've had a score of dogs and pets, written about them. And I've seen this a phenomenal evolution in the way people feel about their animals. And I think that's what we're really talking about, is that what's our perspective, what going to be, what should it be, what could be helpful. And my research is really shaped, I live on a farm. I live with animals, dogs, donkeys, sheep, and I've learned to love them and know them well and lost many of them. And I've learned that perspective is very, very important, or it can just eat you up. In many, many cases, it's a good thing to think of getting some help anyway. I can talk about that in greater detail.
Thank you for that background and your life on a farm. I often am a bit of a Luddite, and so I often think that I belong on a farm instead of in a small town or small city. So it sounds lovely to be surrounded by animals. But do dogs hold a particularly special place in your heart?
They have come to occupy a special place in many hearts. When I was a kid, we had a dog, and he didn't ever set foot in the house. He slept in the garage or the basement if the weather was bad, and he never saw a vet, and there was no such thing as dog food. And I'm not that old, but now it costs about $3,000 for somebody to have a dog, and they are seen often as members of the family. Lots of people tell me, "Oh, my dog is like my child." And I first felt troubled about this when I was on a talk show, and someone said that, "Oh, my dog, I lost my dog. It's like losing a child." And the woman next to her started crying. And I said, "Did you lose a dog?" And she said, "No, I lost a son in Iraq." And when someone tells me their dog is like losing a child, I cry. And that sort of awakened me to the idea that I needed to explore this more carefully, because that's a very hurtful thing to other people to hear. And what's the source of it? The source of it, that dogs have changed their function for basically being burglar alarms and also, protectors and sometimes companions. They never were seen as children. They never had human names. They never went to a vet, and they never ate gourmet dog food. So more and more over the years, and lots of animal lovers saw this coming, especially the shrinks, if I don't mind, you don't mind the term, where they said that because the country was becoming disconnected from family, people were moving, people were on television all day. Now people are on the internet twice as much, and they lose connection with people. Dogs increasingly, and I wrote a book about this called The New Work of Dogs. Dogs have become emotional companions more than the things that they were for centuries. This is really very new for them, and it's often not good for them and not good for people. Sometimes it's wonderful. It's wonderful to love a dog. I've loved like countless dogs, and I've lost countless dogs. And one thing about being on the farm is you learn a lot about life and death, and you have to learn how to deal with that. And I think the same challenge is coming up for dog lovers, because I think there's a loss of perspective. I lost 2 children, and when someone tells me their dog is like a kid, I want to cry too. So I don't think it's good for people to get too enmeshed. And how do you know when you're enmeshed? I think I talked to maybe 30, 40 psychiatrists about this, and many, many more vets who see this happening and are very alarmed about it. What they call extreme mourning. And the line that I came up with that they said again and again and again is, when you lose a dog and you can't stop mourning, like it goes on for the poor owner of Lola, when it goes on for years and you can't get rid of it, you may need some help. The vets will tell you that if you ask, and most psychiatrists will tell you that if you ask. What I learned to do in the book, writing the book, I ran into a young girl. She was 7 years old, and she had a chicken that she adored. They were inseparable. The chicken followed her to school and waited for her to come home. And what about the time I actually came to interview the mother, but the chicken died, got run over by a car. And I said to her, "Oh, poor kid, you must be very sad." "No," she said, "I'm not very sad. I want to get another chicken and love another one the way I love this one." I thought, wow, the wisdom of that just kind of blew my mind. And she did. She went and got another chicken and loved it just as much, and did not mourn it anymore. So I think that's one way to look at it, that when you can't do it by yourself, I believe in therapy. I believe in getting help. And that's what everyone told me. Everyone said the same thing when I interviewed them. If you can't stop, get help. Now, it doesn't mean it's wrong to mourn a dog. That's fine. That's loving. It's natural. But when you get stuck on it and you can't get out of it, it seems to me there's often something wrong. And the shrinks all say the person is often transferring pain and suffering in their own lives onto the dog. And that cannot work out. And it's also not good for dogs, because dogs are dogs. They're not people. They're not children. And it's not good for children to say that. It's not good for people, and it's not good for the dogs, because they put so much pressure on them to make people happy. I know people who've lost family members and eventually get through mourning. So you have to ask yourself, and I'm not saying there's anything awful about it, but I think we've lost perspective in many ways. There are so many people in the world who have no money at all and can't afford to buy dogs and can't get them. And there are so many dogs that need homes. So I always get another dog in a bit of time, and I'm very happy, and I love them just like that kid. She taught me to do that. So I do have a little bit of a different perspective, and I'm not unsympathetic to it. It's awful to love a dog and lose a dog, but I think you have to stop thinking step back a bit and thinking, is this really necessary? Is this really good for dogs? Is it good for people? And someone who's suffering that much for that long, I think often needs some help.
Absolutely, Jon. May I pause for a minute to get a clarification? I have a few questions for you, but my first one is, did I understand, I may have misheard, that you personally lost 2 children?
Yes, I did.
I'm so sorry. I didn't wanna skip that. I'm sorry for your loss. I can't imagine
It's a long
how
time ago, but
but
I still
still.
feel it. You never quite get over that. And I still feel often for one of the dogs I moved up here with, Rose, a border collie, saved my life, like, I don't know how many times. When I would fall down in the snow and the ice and blizzards,
Mm.
and she saved, the sheep babies from getting killed by coyotes, a very brave dog. But when she died, which was a heavy loss for me, I just went and got another border collie, and we did it all over again.
Mm.
And this one was just as wonderful, and I loved him just as much. So to me, that was a good way to do it, and I wouldn't have gotten another dog if I weren't past the mourning. So I don't know, I felt about I don't you don't wanna dismiss it as irrelevant, but when you feel like you've got it, and again, if you're stuck with it, I didn't need a therapist, but I certainly recommended it to a number of people, and it usually has worked. I mean, they really can help you, as I'm sure you know, and a lot of them are like you, which would be very, very nice. So I just think I think that doesn't mean you're anything wrong with you. Even when you use a term like a fur baby, which is common use now, I often stop and think about, was this really a fur baby or is this a dog? So, I mean, I think you don't want to lose the meaning of a dog. Dogs were not meant to make us miserable. Dogs were meant to be with us, to protect us, to even guide us sometimes. And so when you turn them into something else, you're demeaning them. You're not letting them be dogs. And you're also, you're losing your own perspective on, one of the things, I had a woman down the road when Rose died, and she had cancer, and she had no money to help. She was going break, and she was dying alone in her house. And I said, "Okay, I'm gonna keep some perspective on the dog love, because people need help too, and people need loving too, and many of them are not getting it. The dogs are doing fine. People are spending billions of dollars on them, and all kinds of expensive dog food, and it's another issue that comes up is this with the surgery that's now being done on dogs. Costs $6,000 to $7,000 to have a dog have an operation. They can't own up to it. They can't talk about it. They can't accept it, and they don't understand what's happening to them. And so I won't do that. I won't put them through that, anything like that they can't speak up for. And that's tough. It's very tough when the doctor says, "Well, your dog has cancer and I can do something about it, but it'll cost you $8,000." I won't do it, because I just don't think it's healthy for me, and I think it puts a dog out of their natural place and into a very complicated, emotional place that they can't deal with, and sometimes we can't deal with.
Yes, I agree with you so much. It's a mental shift for me, but I can tell from personal experience having on especially one particular occasion, I don't regret much in life, right? But I do see this one time where I had this amazing Great Dane. I just loved him to pieces, and he was injured, and I spent an incredible amount of money having him so-called fixed, healed, put back together. And I could see in retrospect how that was the wrong decision. I did it for me. I didn't do it for him. And it was in fact, I feel pain even now talking about it because in that case, it wasn't the right decision for the pet, but it was my inability to let go, my inability to allow him, an elderly dog who didn't have the healing capacities. And so I deferred to what the vet said was possible. And the outcome was not was not good. So when we look at situations like that, and I agree with you again on how we tend to anthropomorphize, to see our pets as human. Hey, I do it. I do it. I have my dog at my feet, my giant schnauzer, and I do call him my fur baby. And why? I really love how you said the truth, which is that over time, dogs have come away from their place in the field or guarding the home, which is where they were for centuries, guarding the castles, guarding the sheep, guarding the estate, guarding the town, running around eating scraps, whatever they were doing. And over time, as we as a society or societies have become disconnected from each other, then we are looking for replacements if we don't have children, or if our children leave home, or if we're in an unhappy relationship, or alone in our apartment, alone. A dog, a cat is often a great comfort, great solace, terrific companionship. And it gives us a place, I like to say, for me, it gives me a place to put my love. I am able to love and be loved in return. And that's a normal human need. Really wonderful part of who we are as human beings is to be able to love and be loved. But I agree that when it goes to a degree to where we can't grieve, heal, move forward, that's where it becomes problematic, because the attachment to the pet, I agree with you, we do put, some of us, I'm raising my hand, I do it
I think
too.
we all do that. We all do that.
I put the burden on my pet although he's very good at communicating with me and I'm very good at listening. For example, I prefer that he goes on walks with me. If he doesn't want to, he sits down in the driveway and puts his paw up like, no, I'm not walking today. And even though it would be great to have him as a companion, I've learned, hey, I'm great on my own today. And so little things like that although my husband does say, make him go with you. And I say, no, I don't want to make him go with me. But I do think, again, Jon, you have so much wisdom to offer, because you're asking us to look and to have some perspective, not just what is right for us, but also what is right for that being, that animal, that your non-favorite word, fur baby, because, and I never honestly ever thought about the pain calling a dog a child, or the loss, or a baby, how that might inflict pain on somebody who has lost a human baby, that the parity might seem seeming parity might seem incredibly unfair or thoughtless. So thank you for that nugget for me to really reflect on. And then when we go back looking, for example, at this listener's question about how does she move forward from Lola's death, that this grief, it seems to calm itself, to get soothed. And then she runs into someone in public, and they say, where is Lola? And then she goes home and it's empty because she's by herself and the grief sets in. I am of the mind, this is something I've heard from other people, that one loss triggers every other loss that's unresolved. And so if we haven't grieved certain losses from childhood, or the death of people we love, or friendships or relationships, often that pet's loss can also unconsciously be imbued with all of these other layers of loss. This disconnection, yet another disconnection of all of these unresolved disconnections. Does that make sense?
Well, you make a great deal of sense. I think I'm hearing a person of great self-awareness and great openness, and you're not yelling at me, or you're open to what you're doing. You're thinking about it, and you moved ahead with your life, obviously, and you have other things in your life. When the dog becomes the only thing of emotional support, he becomes dangerous. I mean, dogs can't run away. They can't go see a therapist. They can't fight back. They can't even talk. So we're stewards of these animals. That's our role for them, is to be a steward of them. And we have to think for them. And my rule with dogs is I will not allow them to suffer. And if a dog can only be alive by having thousands of dollars of disruptive surgery that they can't understand or approve of, then I would rather let them go than put them through that. Because I've had a couple of dogs. We also made the mistake of having them amputated for something or another. The dogs just suffered awfully for years. Couldn't walk right. Never was the same. I had no right to do that. It wasn't like they could go to the doctor and get fixed. One of the things that I heard from veterinarians again and again and again is that the worst part of their lives was seeing these dogs suffer because people just couldn't let go of them. And they're having surgery after surgery, money after money. And so, I went through this with a neighbor who came crying to the house because the dog had cancer. And the vet said, well, you need to go to the specialist. That was $2,000. And the surgery that the specialist was for $7,000. These people don't have any money. And they were prepared to do it. And they realized they would practically go bankrupt if they did it. And I said, well, you need to think about it. You need to think about what you're comfortable with and what you want to put the dog through. You have to speak for the dog and think about the dog. Often people will make a different decision. Let's say they hate to have those surgeries again and again and again. And the dog is just like, that's what they do to humans. And we can spare dogs of that. So I think we're obliged to do that. I think the larger question, we live in a country where people spend 8 to 9 hours a day on the internet. And those people are disconnected from humans. They don't have town meetings anymore. They don't know their neighbors. And they argue with people they don't know and can't see. Unfortunately, I live in a small town in upstate New York, and I'm different from many of the people here in terms of their politics. But we talk to all the time, because we know each other. We can talk, we can argue, we can share our feelings because we're looking at each other like you and I are doing. And if you can't do that, you're just all alone out in the desert. I have also, I say proudly, was very willing to go into therapy, which I was in for much of my life until just a few years ago, really. And it worked. It helps. And I think talking to someone else is really important. And so the question that she's asking, which is a good question, but I can't answer that. You can't answer that. I don't know what her life and history is like. And she needs to talk to someone who can do that. So why am I feeling this? Why can't I let this go? How can I make it better? In my own experience and the experience of many people I talk to, it was really very simple. You just get another dog. If you loved having a dog so much and it was so wonderful, why won't you get another one? Why would you prefer to be miserable for years and years and years about one that's no longer there? So I think that's the question that a therapist would ask, I think. Or the veteran, and even the vets can't ask, they're not allowed to suggest euthanizing a dog, because they're going to get sued. So you can't go to them for that. All they can do is offer you what the tools they have as human doctors do. And you're kind of on your own. So I think, if getting help works, it just works.
I agree with you. And I'm not biased because I'm a psychotherapist, having been to therapy and greatly learned. And boy, I've grown so much as a result of at times being in the hands of very good clinicians. And I agree that therapy, that connection between the therapist and the client, and the work that can be done in and out of sessions can be incredibly healing.
It's a lifesaver for me.
Oh, absolutely. And I also agree that getting a new pet, which sometimes comes with guilt, sometimes there are practical factors such as, well, I can't afford another pet, or, my situation, my housing doesn't allow another pet. But if situation permits it, getting another pet, I think sometimes there's guilt there. Like, oh, am I replacing that? Am I replacing that beloved dog with another dog and treating the one that passed as just a thing that didn't matter? And I don't believe that that's the case because that dog has passed on, and that dog, if it wanted us to be happy, which dogs like seeing us happy, we don't want to be them to be our sole source of happiness. But we can also see that getting another pet, Freedom, who is at my feet, the giant schnauzer, when we finally got him, he just brings me so much joy. In fact, he's touching my leg right now. He's pawing at me. because he heard his name. And I believe that that joy that they give us, that ability to help us be in the present moment rather than the past, because dogs very much live in the present moment.
Let me
I
ask you a question, Kyle. Ask you a question.
Yes.
When you get the new dog, are you still mourning the old one?
Um, Not nearly as much because I am in the present. I am enjoying this little
That's
being.
what works. That's what works.
Yes, and I agree with you. And I think sometimes it's our guilt, the guilt of, oh, I don't want to try to replace that pet. But you're not replacing the pet. You're bringing in a new source of companionship and relationship. And I think that's really a healthy move. If somebody lost a partner, I wouldn't tell them, oh, well, your partner passed away or your partner moved on or you moved on from your partner. I wouldn't sentence them to not having another partner. I'd say, go through the grief, go through the mourning, do your work, let's go through that together. And then when you're ready, find another partner. Or in this case, I don't think I think with human beings, we want to do a lot of work, especially if it's the end of a difficult relationship, to make sure we've done our internal healing and internal work. And it's not the same, I believe, with pets. I think bringing in a new source of love and comfort and companionship, especially as you said, there are so many dogs in shelters that
12 million dogs in children.
12 million, and they would love to have somebody to want to hold them. And I was listening to a podcast a while back where they were talking about the number of pets out there, especially post-pandemic, that are just being thrown into shelters, particularly in
Millions and
California.
millions and millions.
Millions. And the woman was saying, and I found this horrifying, it was a cute little, I guess they call them purse dogs. And they asked the woman why she was turning the dog over. And she frankly told them, oh, I'm redoing my living room and the dog no longer matches my living room. I've never heard of anything like that. And I'm not judging anybody, but I am saying that dog would love to be scooped up by somebody who really wanted to love it, no matter what their living room looked like.
Well, when the dog Rose I was talking about had cancer, and people around me said, "Oh, you got to do this and you got to do that," and I said, "I'm thinking of putting her down." "Oh no, that's terrible. She's a wonderful dog." And I went downstairs. I couldn't find her, and she was lying in a pool of vomit.
Oh,
And this is a very proud working dog who was very strong. And I leaned over, and I really felt I heard her say to me, "Get me out of here." I don't want to be like this. That's not my life. I always imagine what the dog would say if they could talk. And what dogs want of us is for us to be happy. That's what they do. They will serve us in any way, love us unconditionally, and help us whenever they can. So I don't think I want to reward them by torturing them for years because I was selfishly in need of them. So I think of them. I don't think any of your dogs would look at you and say, "Oh, let's stay alive and mourn me for years." It's not what they're about. I think they're about serving us and making us happy. And we're losing that feeling because we're turning them into emotional slaves for us. If you're unhappy and you're alone, there are things you can do to make your life better other than just getting a dog and expecting them to do all that for you. I'm not diminishing the pain of a dog's loss. I felt it many times, and I still feel the loss of Rose, but I'm not mourning her 12 years later. I have three wonderful dogs. I'm crazy about them, and we have a great deal of time together. And if anything happens to them, I'll go get another one. I don't mean that in a light way. It's a very heavy thing, but there are also practical things I found that help people deal with this, because I'd like to be helpful and not just pompous. The help. One of the things I learned to do, and I researched this, is to acknowledge that the dog is going to die and give yourself and the dog family some time to deal with it. Say, okay, you're sick. I'm going to put you down, and it's time for you to leave. But let's go have a perfect day. Let's go. You can eat wherever you want. You can go wherever you want. I'll take pictures of you. I'll write about you and save the magazine or a little booklet for you. And I even bury them in the property. The dogs that died here all stay on the farm. And I say hello to them, and I'm nuts just like everybody else is, it's about dogs. but I was prepared for it. And I give them a wonderful day off. I give them steak and everything else they could want. And I say goodbye. And I dig a hole and we have a surf ceremony. We take pictures and we let them go. And then in a week or two or a month, I start looking around and find another one. So those things I found really help. Those are the things in the book that really seem to help people. And a lot of people hide this from their children, and they won't. Oh, we don't talk about it in front of the kids. The kids know what's happening, and they need to be brought into it. The whole family needs to be brought into it, and go along with it and prepare for it. My daughter came up and she wrote a little notebook about the dog and all of her memories of it and her pictures of it, and she did notes about it, the dog. And so she would read that when she was upset. So there are things you could do to prepare, but you have to acknowledge that dogs are not going to live forever. They don't live as long as people. And if you're going to live with dogs, you're going to have to deal with death more than once because they don't live long. And we can save them the things that we are not saving our grandparents, which is being tortured for years and years and years by surgery after a surgery. And also there's the question of self-preservation. You know, you do somewhere need to think of yourself. Can you afford $7,000? Is that appropriate? Is there anything else you need to do with that money? Is it going to affect your kids' college? Is it going to affect your own ability to pay your mortgage? You know, these are bumpy times. And I think that's when you go into that vet's office, I always urge people, you need to have an idea of what your limit is. You know, what do you, because one of the things I think that perpetuates guilt, if you believe that surgery after surgery will keep you from being guilty, there's no end to it. You'll keep the dog alive again and again and again, usually in suffering, so that you just don't have to feel bad. And I think when you step back and look at that, you know, I go into the vet and I say, look, here's how much money I have, and here's how much money I'm going to spend. And I'm not going to spend more than that because I don't think it's appropriate. And I don't feel it's fair to the dogs. Now, I know that's a minority point of view, but I don't mean it in a cruel way. I mean it, I don't want dogs to be a disaster or a tragedy for me. I love them and I love being with them. I don't want to turn it into some suffering, you know, drama.
You are very kind and compassionate and far from heartless or cold. You're giving us a mix of pragmatism and perspective and gentleness and heart. And this territory, you know, I'm here on the other side of the screen from you with tears in my eyes, and I'm not ashamed of them. It's painful to talk about pet loss. It's painful for us to talk about loss at all. Humans don't like loss. We like connection. And it's, you know, the biggest focus of my work is helping people love more, love safely, be connected. Yet you're really highlighting some critical truths, which one of which is pets will naturally die. They have shorter lifespans. And to prepare ourselves for that, not trick ourselves into thinking they'll live forever. I have done that myself. I have certainly convinced myself that my Great Dane would last 50 years. Well, he was never going to last 50 years. And so when we do these little mind tricks to ourselves, we need to get a bit of objectivity, pull back and be honest with ourselves about what is best, what is reality. A Great Dane may live, if we're lucky, 10 to 15 years. And when that time comes, wherever it is in that continuum, whatever the type of dog it is, how are we going to let that dog go? If it's cancer, are we going to let them go? If it's something that's fairly easy on the dog to address, are we going to do that? Again, keeping in mind, and I'm parroting what you're saying or what I'm hearing you saying, that balance between what is best for the pet, what is best for our lives, what is going to create an outcome that is healthy for everybody.
You know, actually, I think, you know, you're actually a great role model because you love the dog very much, obviously, and you love the new dog. I noticed that whenever you mention the Great Dane, your tears come in your eye. Whenever you mention the new one, you smile. So I think there's a lot of lesson in that. Is that, you know, you have a right to be happy, and you have a right. I know you treated the dog well. I can tell. We're great being your dog. I can tell that right away. but you also have perspective. And I think you are able to feel joy with the dog being gone, even though it brings up tears. And you're able to feel happiness with the new one, which eases the pain. That is a great role model for people to pay attention to, because I think that's exactly, if you ask what really works, that's what works. That, and of course, accepting it as a part of life. And death and life are cousins. So you can't have one without the other, especially dogs. If you're going to have dogs in your life, you're going to learn trouble and sadness, and then you're going to learn how to move on. If you don't learn how to move on, I would say you need help. And I can't tell you when, because that's a personal individual.
Mhm.
But the person who wrote you is saying, I don't know why I can't get out of this. That's where she needs help, somebody helping her figure that out. And then she'll feel better. And getting another dog, she'll feel even better yet. So it always makes me sad when people don't do things that will heal them, and will just stay miserable, because that's not what dogs are about. I mean, that's a perversion of the dog reality. They've been so good to people for so many centuries, for so many things. I really feel obliged to do my part. And now it's my turn, when the dog is sick, to do well by them and make sure they don't suffer 1 minute more than they have to. That's my responsibility. So we just went through this with a chicken, I have to say, who we loved, the chicken. She gave us eggs for 12 years. She was not wanting to go. She had a lot of life in her. And finally, we had to go out and kill her, because she was suffering so badly. And the other animals were coming after her. She was drawing
Oh,
maggots. And we couldn't let that happen. So we thanked her, and we did a little sniffle, and we buried her in the backyard. So that's what a farm teaches you, because you can't be on a farm if you don't do that. You'll go broke and ruined in a minute. And I also, in talking to people about this for years and researching it, I saw just a incredible increase in dog suffering.
mm.
They are dogs. They deserve to be respected as dogs.
Absolutely. And I do have to say, you talking about farm life, I don't think I'm quite ready for farm life yet. I think I would be a hot mess. So I have some ways to go. But I appreciate that honesty, because you're right. You think of the book, All Creatures Great and Small. It is that cycle of life. And society today has distanced us from that natural cycle of life, of birth and death and birth and death. And so I agree on so many fronts. You're really opening my eyes on so much, Jon, that this part of pet loss is indeed because for one part of it is that we're not in touch with natural life anymore. We're in our homes, our high rises, our apartments, disconnected from nature, and we don't see that natural part you're talking about of the dog passing or the chicken passing or the cow passing. All of those are extremely, for anyone, most people have never encountered that.
You and my wife would love each other. My wife goes out every morning into the water tank where the animals go, and she looks for bugs who are drowning. And there's always 2 or 3 in there. They fly in there, they can't get out. And she goes every morning and picks them out one by one and holds them until they dry, and then lets them off. And she saves like bugs all the time. And I first looked at this, and you're out of your mind. I never heard of anybody doing this, and now I'm doing it. I go by and I look, and oh, there's one in there. And I think she respects nature and loves it, and helps it in that way. And that's where the animal thing is very beautiful. You can also do that with dogs. You can give them great lives. I give my dogs terrific lives. They run around, they get food, they get snacks, they get love. They live the life of dogs. And that's the gift to us, really, I think. That's when it feels really great. Like your dog is at your feet now. I can picture it. It's a lovely image. And she's going with you to work, and she's not, I have a little dog right under my feet, a lab, who whenever I'm working, she won't speak or move. She sits there. And when the computer turns off, she hops up and is ready to go.
Oh
But
my goodness.
that same feeling, my dog is always with me when I write. When I'm on the computer, she comes in, goes, curls up at my feet and goes, this is a big dog. And she goes to sleep. And she's never made a sound while I'm either doing a Zoom or writing or thinking. And then the minute I get off, she can be as big a pain in the
She
ass.
knows. She knows. I do
knows.
have to say, you're right about your wife and I. We have definitely much in common. I rescue worms. My husband laughs. I rescue salamanders, birds, anything. I take spiders outside.
I used to kill spiders in the house,
Mm.
and now I have to call her. The Maria, the spider in the bathroom, and she comes running in with a towel, and she just pulled a bird out of our wood stove today. Got stuck in there, and I'm saying, I wouldn't do that. The thing is warm and dangerous, and she plucks it out, shows it to me, talks to it, and then takes it out. So, but I think that's a great. We love that. We love that about our lives, that we can do that.
Yeah.
I must say, I never thought of saving bugs like that. She has pictures of them. They dry off and shake their wings. You can't even see them, and then they fly away. And she would not let a bug die like that.
And tying this back to the listener's question, how can we heal when we are in a place of loss? 5 minutes ago, I had huge tears in my eyes and was hoping I could find a piece of tissue, right? And to not snivel too much when I'm on Zoom or, recording a podcast. And here we go. I'm smiling. I'm laughing. Why? Because we're talking about rescuing that which we can, loving that which we can. And so for our listener who wrote in and all of our listeners, that grief, I remember when I lost my mom and I was just crying everywhere, it was a tremendous loss. And it subsides. All loss subsides. It doesn't mean I don't miss her every day, that I don't grieve her still. Yet that is part of healthy loss, healthy grieving, is realizing that over time it subsides. Over time it subsides. And unlike a dog, I can't get a new mother, but I can cherish my mother's memory. I can cherish my Great Dane's memory. I can cherish, any other pet's memory and move on, finding moments of joy, finding peace, and realizing that when loss does come up or grief does come up and you feel that ow, as I was feeling 7 minutes ago when I was thinking of Bentley, that's okay. I don't have to stay there.
It's okay to
It's
cry.
okay to
It's
cry.
very healthy to cry.
Yes, go ahead, cry. Give yourself permission.
Let it move it through yourself.
You said it perfectly. You let it move through you. And that is what we are intended to do with all of our feelings, all of our emotions. Feel them, move through. Feel them just like the joy. We can't hold on to the joy forever, but we can certainly, hold it to us, cuddle with it. And then if a loss comes or a sad memory comes, feel it, let it go.
And we have an obligation to treat them well, but we also have a right to be happy and to do what makes us happy. Doesn't mean we're not going to cry or regret things or whatever. But I think the acknowledgement, you acknowledge your pain and you acknowledge what you would change and not change. Unfortunately, most people have trouble doing that. They feel like their obligation is to keep this animal alive forever. And no matter what its costs or goes through. I know a woman who wrote me that she spent $17,000 on cat surgery for a urinary infection. And she went bankrupt. She had lost her house. And she was on a radio show, and she said, "Oh, I feel really good about that because I've proven that I really love the cat." And I said, "Well, I'm thinking you've proved some other things too, that you really need to get some help." And I didn't say that, but there's stories like that all over the place, and any vet can tell you 100 of them like in a minute. So I think it's really good to talk about it, and I think it's good to cry, and it's good to do whatever you need to do. But you said it rightly, then it does go away, and if you let it, if you don't let it, to me, that's when you need help. A vet can't do that. A lot of veterinary schools now are actually hiring, training social workers because the vets are overwhelmed with these emotional problems and they don't know what to say.
That
That's
makes
probably not a
sense.
bad idea, really.
That makes sense. And for our listener, her question, it sounds as if, a year or so later, sounds as if the feelings are subsiding. They surely come up. They get triggered by people's questions or an empty home. And that just to continue, maybe she needs or wants a psychotherapist or a social worker, somebody to chat with Yet also, if she notices, even after listening to this podcast, that she can make space for those occasional bubbles of grief and continue to let them go.
Absolutely.
Oh, Jon, you are such an amazing soul, and I'm so honored to spend time with you.
I
You have
enjoyed it
been,
very much more than I imagined I would. I really enjoyed it very much. Well, you never
you-
know, but it was really great.
you've been
I
such a
I'm
gift.
available anytime you want to talk about it, either on your program or even just on the phone.
Thank
If
you.
you need to talk through something, because I
Thank
suspect
you.
you hear from a lot of people. Right.
You're a very precious, kind soul. I am blessed. Thank you.
Thank you. I feel the same way.
Where can our listeners find you? And your work you're easy to find. I mean, you're an amazing soul. So where can our
My
listeners
main
find
work now is on a blog. I moved away from publishing. I didn't really like the way publishing was going, so corporate and all. So I started a blog, and I have a lot of people, like 1.5 million people on the blog. It's bedlandfarm.com. And I also become a photographer. I take a lot of pictures of flowers and stuff like that. And I write about a lot of different things, but also I'm working to be a safe place in these times of petulance and fighting. So I don't allow any arguing. I don't allow any hateful emails. I don't allow any of that. So it's a safe place for people to go when they're feeling afraid.
Thank
I
you.
put up flower pictures every day for 3 years, just because people really want to see them. And so it's made me a pretty good photographer, and that's exciting for me to be able to do that and grow like that. And I love the farm. I love my wife. I love my life. And I believe now something I didn't know, that I do have a right to be happy. And I have a right to love dogs in a way that is meaningful to me and not painful. So that's
Well,
my spot. And I really enjoyed talking with you. You're really you're just lovely, lovely
you're
person.
lovely too, and you're just precious and adorable and wonderful. And again, I'm truly grateful. And also, listeners, please, you'll be able to find links to Jon's work in the show notes. It's Jon, Jon Katz, Katz. His photography is absolutely exquisite. So that's a bonus on top of everything else. So, Jon, again, I thank you for sharing your time, your love, your energy with us today. Oh, I also have to say, thank you for creating a safe space. I'm not a fan of a lot of the anger and side taking that's out there. I'm a big fan of safe spaces and kindness and love. So, thank you for the work you do on that front, too. It's critical in today's world that people have a safe space that honors the importance of kindness and love. Different perspectives, but always kindness and love. So thank you. And to our listeners, thank you for sharing this heart-warming, heart-touching journey with us today. It has been a joy and a privilege. And as always, I thank you for being with us today. And this is Imperfect Love.
Thanks so much for sharing your time with me today. Remember, you have the power to transform your life and love fearlessly, if imperfectly, and it's my privilege to help you along the way. You can find more life-changing content, including my books and other podcast episodes, at drcarlamanly.com. Feel free to submit your own confidential questions through my website. I'll do my very best to include your issue on a future episode. If you found this podcast helpful, please subscribe and leave a review. Until we connect again, this is Dr. Carla Marie Manly wishing you oceans of blessings and love. Please note, this podcast is psychoeducational in nature and is not intended to replace formal mental health support. Please contact your healthcare provider or emergency hotline if you need psychiatric care. And, as always, please take good care of your amazing, wonderful self.